Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randall and Gus Kearns.
Welcome in, listeners, to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we're always talking everything college hoops. You could have been anywhere else on the dial, but chose to be here with us, Mike and Gus, and we're going to send out a special gobble to everybody out there, and we appreciate that. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We're happy that you're spending part of the holiday weekend here with the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast. Mike, isn't it good to be with the family?
It is tremendous to be with the family. It's my favorite holiday. It's great hanging out with my...
Wait. It's your favorite holiday?
Of course it is. Yeah, absolutely. It's about giving thanks. We're fortunate. You have your kids around, wife, your parents, the whole bit. I got my dad, had a little surgery. He's coming over. Going to have some hangout here, watch some football. Great time.
Excellent.
Low-key, we're not traveling anywhere. I'm not basting a turkey. We bought it. I'm sorry for all you people that like to make the turkey. You shoot it in the backyard, then you bring it in. Okay. It's not my thing. Gus knows me in the kitchen don't work. So you know what it is? You accept your faults and you look for good flow on Thanksgiving. I will be having good flow. I will be having a gin martini. I could also be having a White Claw. No one in America is having a gin martini and a White Claw tomorrow, but I am, and we're excited.
I don't know if I'm going to go that route for Thanksgiving. I have to be totally honest. I'll probably bust out a craft beer with my brother-in-law, and then maybe later on / evening hit up a little Jameson. I think that might be the move for us. And I have already been deemed automatic QB for the family football game outside.
Great.
Decided to toss the pigskin around to the kids and to some of the adults, and maybe have a high completion ration, if that's okay.
No Seahawks for you this Thanksgiving. No Seahawks.
No, that's okay. We're playing Monday night, so I'm excited to play.
That's a big game, Gus. That's a big game, man. You haven't beaten a lot of great teams, I would say. Russell Wilson is tremendous, but I don't think you've beaten a ton of great teams. And can Chris Carson stop fumbling, Gus? It's a little bit of a problem for somebody who owns him.
He can start fumbling when he stops getting so many touches. I mean, he leads the league in touches. I'm not a fantasy football guy. Is that true? He leads the league in touches?
He's right there. And now with Penny, though, I don't know. It's like purgatory. It's like me having to watch Musselman coach every game and no other game is on. It's what this is. Because do you play Carson? Do you not? All Carroll's going to do is chew the gum. It could be 50-50. It could be Carson. It's not. We don't want indecision in the fantasy playoffs. And I don't want to be watching Musselman every game. That's for sure.
All right. Listeners, I'm sorry. Thank you for imbibing in some Seahawk talk during the college basketball podcast. I apologize. It's my fault. I have my Seahawk garb on for this particular podcast. That's why Mike brought it up. Go Hawks on Monday night. We're very excited about that. All right, Mike, listen, the whole reason we're having this podcast is for, the number one team losing again. So, do we just want to start right there and say, like, hey, if you're, a number one ranked team and there's going to be a different one, probably ranked next Monday, should they be shaking in their boots and living in fear that they're going to get upset at home by an unranked team that's somewhere in the 200s in KenPom? Like, that's where this sport is at right now. It's absolute mayhem.
What's mayhem is the fact that Oregon has cut this Seton Hall game down to 10 with about 11 minutes left. I'll be having a White Claw in about 12 minutes if they get this puppy down. I may do it right here on the pod. Listen, Gus, I think the loss by Duke, first of all, is shocking. And a lot of these people out there are saying, it's not that shocking. Stop. I don't care. I know Stephen F. Austin is better than Evansville. I know that. I know the metrics. I know them. Okay. The point is Duke losing at home as a 20-plus point favorite to Stephen F. Austin is not something anyone would expect. However, the gap between the interquartile range of temes and that upper quartile is less than it's ever been, and it's exciting. At this point
Correct.
Last year, Gus, it was Zion, it was Barrett, it was all these 36 stars down in Kentucky. There's none of that this year. There's a lot of parity. Those teams that are veterans that have 5 starters back or 4 starters back from your smaller schools can do damage, and it sets up for what should be a fantastic tournament. I think Duke will be fine. I think Kentucky will be fine. But I think it makes a statement, and that's what makes it fun, partner, right? I mean, anybody can beat anybody. This is great.
I know you just did your metrics voice, and I don't want to poo-poo that at all or dismiss that, because that voice is one of the best voices on the podcast. But if we are going to take a peek at the metrics early on this season, and we're going to take a look at KenPom specifically. So if you go to Ken's site and we look at just his basic number, which is the adjusted efficiency metric and margin, there's no team currently this season that is over 30. And if we go back and look last season, we have multiple teams over 30. We got 5 teams over 30. If we go back and look 2 seasons ago, Villanova was at 33. If we go back and look a couple seasons back in 2017, we have Gonzaga that's at 32. If we go back and look again, Villanova is at 32, North Carolina is at 29-8. So, and if we go back even further, and we look at that great Wisconsin team, that Kentucky team, I mean, there are 7 teams, 6 or 7 teams that are above 30. And if we go back and look at the rankings this year, Michigan State is still atop Ken Palm's rankings at a ranking at 27. So you say like the gap has shrunk between the top teams and the lesser teams. It's absolutely true on all fronts. It's absolutely true with results wise. It's absolutely true metrics based wise. And it's absolutely true with score margin wise. I mean, there's no thing that doesn't say like the gap has shrunk. And guess what? You know what the reason is? The reason is the 3-point line. Moving out the 3-point line has totally eliminated any sort of offensive advantages that the rule changes the past 2 or 3 years with the shot clock, with the bumping, moving on the perimeter, have allowed for the offenses. This moving back of the 3-point line has created a little bit more space, but it's definitely taken away from any offensive advantage that teams have had in the past.
Yeah, definitely. And listen, the over-unders have evened out. I talked to you first couple games of the season how the unders were killing it. Now Vegas has adjusted. Teams are starting to make more threes. Watched a tremendous game tonight with Dayton and Kansas. We're going to talk more about both those teams, but Obi Toppin, lottery pick, end of story. But it definitely has changed. It's made it better. It's made it more fun. And I know the book on the average fan is going to be that you want the upsets early in the tournament, but you want the blue bloods late. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think with the internet, I think with podcasts like ourselves, a lot of other people, social media, people know these schools. So I don't think that's true. I think it sets up for a great tournament. I'm sure Duke will be fine the end of the year. So will Kentucky, all these teams, Michigan State, no problem. But it certainly has made it more fun, especially early in the season, because we get to talk about some of these smaller schools that you and I love.
To be honest, like we hope that we have this conversation in March, but now we're having that conversation daily. It's not even like, oh, we're hoping for an upset in this particular bracket in this tournament or this particular matchup in this, off-campus site. No, we're talking about this daily, which is like an awesome conversation to have. And a couple of other places that we can visit. We talked about Kentucky losing at home to Evansville and then Evansville going on a 3-game losing streak. We talked about Elon playing UNC really tight. At the half, and then UNC eventually pulling away. Memphis at home against Little Rock. Arizona, can't cover at home against San Diego State. These are all things that, we've talked about and mentioned and paid attention to. And the parity is real right now. I mean, the parity is like a catchphrase in every sport, and especially the NFL, for Major League Baseball, the NBA. But right now in our sport, in college basketball, like parity is a real thing. And the movement of the 3-point line, which is supposed to create more space and more creative opportunities for drivers and kickers, dribble drive, Kentucky, whatever you want to call, it hasn't led to the type of efficiency that we've seen the past couple of years. And you know what would really benefit right now? I was thinking about this too, Mike. You know what the sport would really benefit from right now? It would really benefit from an unbelievably dynamic shooter like Trae Young right now. Like if there was a guy that could really go off and shoot it like bananas and really take advantage of the further out 3-point line and create that space, that's where the sport would really, really advance. And that's where like a superstar could be made. Maybe that superstar is in waiting right now.
Yeah, you never know. There's so many things we can talk about. What we also haven't talked about, partner, is the fact that Mike Schrage, there's a path where I would be Mike Schrage's assistant right now at Elon, but we can get to that a little bit later. That's a funny story in and of itself, folks. We'll save that for a separate podcast, but there is a path where Mike Randall could have been the assistant to Mike Schrage at Elon. Very odd. Anyway, we'll move on.
Okay. We need to revisit that conversation at some point. Mike, what are a couple of other things that caught your eye early on in the season? Just give me a couple of quick hitters here and we'll respond to those along with, all of the close games and the upsets that we've seen like that have just been repetitive over and over again early on this season.
Yeah, so we talked, Duke loses to Stephen F. Austin. Kentucky loses to Evansville. The UNC offense has not clicked for about 2 years now. We have not seen the typical UNC offense. We see the explosion last year. Kobe White was very good, but then they lose that game at home to Virginia that we thought was very odd. Then this year, Cole Anthony comes out, has 30 plus points, but then they've struggled along the way. They're losing at home at halftime to Elon. So UNC, Duke has been flawed. Kentucky has been flawed. UNC has not looked great. Gonzaga didn't even look great in that one game they had at home. Now they've picked it up since then, but they played poorly at home to Texas. Arlington didn't cover. Anyway, not that I bet that, although gambling is now legal now in New Jersey, but
it is.
But they've come around. But again, you go to the average person, can they name 3 players on Gonzaga? Anyone who's dominant? There's really no dominant player. I mean, Tilly can be that, but he's always injured. So until I stick Killian Tilly play 20 games in a row, I can't say that. Duke, Vernon Carey.
Trey Jones.
Yeah, Stanley can jump through the gym. He's a better dunker than Zion Williamson. That's right. Yes, he is. So, Kentucky, Maxey had the great first game. Now he's on the side of a milk carton. Sestina is now going to be out for a while. So everyone seems to be flawed. Couple things here. First off, Memphis at home against Little Rock does not cover. And then I watched the entire Memphis game against Ole Miss. Thank you very much for the cover, Ole Miss. A legendary cover, in fact. If you didn't see the end of that game, Memphis got up big. There's no Wiseman. He's sitting out to South Florida in January, but he'll be back. No problem. Gus and I hate it, but whatever. At least he's coming back in January. They're down the whole game. Ole Miss gets in foul trouble. Kermit Davis hammering away. They cut the lead to 2. Breon Tyree shooting a shot at the free throw line with 8 seconds left to cut it to 1. The spread is 4. I'm getting 4. I wrote it up for Action Network. He misses. Ball gets tipped out. Dunk. Now, Memphis is up 4. There's 0.9 seconds left. I'm like, great. It's going to be a push or a loss. Yeah, 3.5. Ball's past a half court 3-pointer. Good cover there. Now, Memphis can't make free throws. Memphis doesn't know how to slow the game down, time and score. No idea. But they do play great defense. They're very active. Petty has them playing hard. They don't foul. They get in the lanes. They recover quickly. They look the part of what Kentucky would want them to be. So the first thing that kind of jumped out to me, Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina, Memphis, they have flaws. They're really good. They're going to be fine, but they kind of look flawed to me, partner, a little bit. Even Arizona, who looked really, really good, couldn't cover at home against South Dakota State. So no one's been dominant across the board. That's what I've noticed.
Listen, I think this is what we're going to take from this particular part of the conversation on this particular podcast. We need to value wins. If there's a team that's going to pull out a win and maybe not cover, those wins that might be nail biter wins, or maybe wins that don't look pretty, like the next day in the box score or the next day in the local paper write-up, those wins are going to hold serious weight due to all of the losses that are being taken on by every team, every program, and every school thus far early on this season. This is going to be a repeatable pattern. This pattern of result has some sustainability. So I think that the teams that are going to rack up the wins, like Gonzaga, like UNC, that are going to hold on in these tight games and not blow it in overtime like Duke, those wins are actually going to benefit them via seed lines down the line in March. And I think that we should really pay attention to that part of it, those teams that are actually gritty enough to pull out those wins and not just blow up and implode and find a way to lose those games.
100%. Amen. Preach, brother, preach. Another one that I thought was interesting. Oregon's cut it to 3, 8 minutes left. Another one that I think is interesting is
love the in-pod update. Love that.
Exactly. Miles Powell, great. He's got 25 points. Rest team is 6. That's great. Now, Mississippi State is better than I thought they were. I was going to be on them. I loved them last year. Ben Howland, 3 straight Final Fours, and UCLA gets dismissed. Funny. That's a really good one. How'd you like losing a Hofstra the other night, Mick? Okay. Now, Mississippi State, Reggie Perry looks tremendous. Him and Tyson Carter. Tyson Carter, the guard, 17 points, 4.7 assists. He's 37% from 3-point range, and he makes his free throws 86%. He's a top 10 free throw shooter in the country. Reggie Perry, big forward, 14-8, definitely going to be drafted this year. He's also 39%. They've looked impressive. They've played very well, and I think they're a team in the SEC that is going underrated, better than I thought they would be. By the way, stupid pick. Coastal Carolina, I told you this.
Right.
We're charting picks. We're doing bets. My bets have been very hot lately. I think, Gus, right now, over the last 3 days, I think I'm something
you've been good the last 3 days.
Yeah, I'm like 16-5, I think. So it's been good. But Coastal Carolina hosting that classic, how did we not pick that game? And then I think they would have covered against Baylor, but their leading scorer, Dibba, I think it is, Brina Dibba.
Yeah.
He blows out his knee. He's done. Next day, they're playing Mississippi State because they're home. Mississippi State only giving 6. How did we not do that? Mississippi State blew them out. So I think Mississippi State is pretty good. And again, this section under the term good, not good. UCLA, not good, Gus. It's Mick Cronin's first year. He was their 12th choice as head coach. I understand that. He's doing as much as he can. They lost at home to Hofstra. Now, we know what happened under Alford when they lost at home to Belmont, right? So certainly Mick has a year carte blanche here, but that's a bad loss. Great for Joe Mihalik. Props to him. We'll have him on the pod. We had him last year, have him again this year. And by the way, send us a thank you note. Very nice guy of him. They lost the Hofstra to UCLA. And by the way, I think BYU is also good. We'll get to them in a little bit. But what are you talking to me about Mississippi State? Talk to me about UCLA. What do you think?
Okay, so I'm going to try to give a nice compliment to 2 programs here by talking about Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State's profile and their team outlook and roster is very similar to Dayton's. And I think they have a big man. I think you can compare Perry to Obi Toppin. I think you compare the point guards there. I know we'll get to Dayton in a little bit, but their dual point guard situation is a real advantage where they have 2 decision makers and 2 ball handlers and 2 shot makers. And I think I know the coaching isn't exactly a perfect match with Howland with multiple Final Fours and Grant with his success in other places, but not Final Four success. So I think if you're going to look at their roster makeup, I think that's really similar. And I think if you're going to project out NBA draft-wise, I could imagine Perry and Toppin being picked in a very similar area within 10 picks of each other. And I can also see the point guards having similar success during their college careers, maybe not NBA players, but compiling numbers that are going to just add up and successes and wins that are going to add up. So I'm just going to try to compare Mississippi State to Dayton and say, you know what? Both of them could be really good for the same reasons because they own the same parts. I'm with you on UCLA. I think they need to figure some things out. I don't think he has the roster and the makeup that he wants. And I don't know if those players are actually buying into the way that Mick wants them to play. And I don't know if it's a perfect marriage right now. I'm sure they'll get some wins along the way and maybe they figure it out in a month. And by the way, great win for Hofstra. I love that the local team gets a big win out west. That's beautiful. So I think Mississippi State, I think you're right on. And I think if we're going to find a comparison to a team that everybody's talking about, I think the comparison is Dayton.
Next 2 teams that I think are good. I'm going to start with the easy one, and then I'm going to prick you a little bit, okay? The first one, Ohio State is good. You called them to the Final Four. It's an excellent call. Holtman is like Belichick light on the sideline. He's got Wesson playing hard, which is an effort in and of itself. Great defensive team. They're locked in. Ohio State is good. They are absolutely a threat to Michigan State in the Big Ten. No doubt about it. Second team, and then comment away here. Gus, BYU is going to be a problem. They're going to smoke St. Mary's. Leave St. Mary's the hell out of this. I'm coming after Gonzaga. What they have been able to do, and remember, they are doing all of this. They are doing all of this without Yoli Childs, who was suspended 9 games for whatever it is because he went for the draft and came back too late, even though there's a coaching change.
Terrible NCAA decision, but that's a whole other thing for another.
Totally agree with you. They are very talented. They play well together. They are selfless. They're old because they've gone on the Mormon missions. All the kids are like 23, 24. Jake Toulson is a problem.
He's a problem.
15.3 points, 4.6 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal. He's 83% from the free throw line, and he's over 40 from deep. TJ Hawes is good because his mom says he's good, but he is good. He is good. He's gritty. He attacks the basket. He doesn't force it. Barcelo is good. Everyone's got a role. When they get Childs back, who may be the best player in that conference, they are going to be a problem. I have been very impressed with their schedule so far. I did not think they were going to be very good. I ended up staying up late, watching all late night games there. And all of a sudden, they play San Diego State and they lose 76-71. I think San Diego State is actually good. Southern Utah, that's an impressive win at home by 5. Southern Utah's a good team. The big win with Hawes' shot that bounces up and bounces in at Houston to knock off their non-conference home winning streak. Boise State, tough game. We'll get to them in a little bit. They're actually better than I think they are, and I have an NBA player. UCLA, smoke them if you got them, 15, and they played very tough against Kansas. They just ran out of gas, but I think they're very good. Talk to me, partner, about Ohio State and BYU.
Okay, I'm just going to pose one question to you. You ready? We all assume, I think all college basketball listeners out there that are, keyed into what we're talking about, we would agree that UVA has the best defense in the country. Are we okay with that?
Yes. Today the score at halftime with Maine was what, 24-12? I sent it to you. I mean, I just slow it down screen, back screen.
Now, their defense is real. Like, it's a real thing. It's not like a metric thing or a made up thing. Their defense is legit. But, if we're going to go to metrics and we go to KenPom, guess which team has the second best defense currently in the nation, according to KenPom? After UVA.
Tell me it's the Buckeyes.
Yeah, it's Ohio State. So not only are they playing really efficiently on the offensive end, because they own a top 25 offensive efficiency number as well, they are the number 2 defensive efficient team, according to KenPom, right now. And that, I know they're not at UVA level, but they do own that number right now. So number 1, you're going to have to work your tail off on the offensive end to go ahead and beat the Buckeyes. And number 2, they have shot makers. Wesson is a creator inside. DJ Carton is an unbelievable athlete coming off the bench as a quasi-combo point guard. He can dunk on you, and he can bring it into the lane and create in space. They have one of my favorite guys, Luther Muhammad, who I think is like he's a Jersey guard who's going to bring it to you hard and is fearless and will make a free throw at any time. They have players all over the court, and they have shot makers all over the court. So if you're going to defend at a really high level during a year where the three-point line is pushed out and scoring is at a premium, and you have a profile and a characteristic that's similar to UVA, and you're going to make your shots dissimilar from UVA, that's why I was kind of high on Ohio State. So I'm in on Ohio State. I'm with you here. I've been in on them since preseason. But let's get to BYU. I think BYU is really interesting. You mentioned Tula, you mentioned Hawes. They have 2 shot makers on the outside. They have a legit difference maker and an NBA-ish type player in Yoli Childs when he comes back on the inside. When they plug him in on the inside, those next couple of games are going to look a little hazy. And then once he gets integrated, I think you're spot on. I think that's the team that can challenge Gonzaga and really make some noise in the WCC. I think that's the challenge. I don't know. We were all on board with Jordan Ford and Fitz for St. Mary's, and we thought that they might be the team that we should pay attention to. But maybe it's BYU. Maybe you're right. Maybe once they get whole and that roster is complete, maybe they're the team that's going to challenge the Zags.
Yeah, the issue with what I'm watching is when I've watched St. Mary's, and I've seen them 3 times now, and I've watched BYU and I've seen them 3 times, I feel those 2 teams right now are equal. St. Mary's would win at home, and BYU would win at home. The problem is you're introducing what I think is probably the best all-around player in the conference in Child as well, on top of what BYU's doing. They're running the shuffle cuts.
That's an accurate statement. It's a very accurate statement.
That's the deal. The coach is going to be a question because Rose is a legend. He's gone. Fine. I understand that. I think BYU is sneaking up on people. I don't think people think they're very good. I think they're going to see a couple bad losses here and say up, down, because no one really gets on top of these small schools unless they're undefeated. But yeah, I think they're an issue. I like the way they play. I've been impressed with what they've done. I've won some cash on them. Life is good with BYU with me, let me tell you.
Listen, if life is good with BYU on the cash side, then I'm good with BYU. Okay, what else you got?
2-1 here that I want to talk to you about. First of all, Cincinnati. Yep. Cincinnati has been struggling. I wanted to know what they were going to be like with Brannon now. No Mick Cronin. Cumberland got suspended for a game there. That wasn't a good sign early on. There was some issue and he got suspended. They played Ohio State, kind of tough, nice cover late for them. Lost that one, didn't tell us much. They pound Drake, thank you very much. They pound Alabama A&M, no problem. They barely beat Illinois State at home. Okay, Cumberland returns. Bowling Green, they lose in overtime to Bowling Green. That was odd. They barely beat Valpo the other night in OT. They're playing UNLV on Saturday. Can't wait for that game. Very up and down with them. I'm not so sure. Remember, their identity was defense, so now you're shifting it with Brannon to more of an offensive philosophy. I don't know if they're quite ready for this yet. I think Cumberland is a special player. I just don't like the suspension early on. but he's got Vogt, Keith Williams, Trey Scott. All these guys seem okay, but I think their calling card, the way they're comprised, is defense, and I don't like the fact that they're kind of getting away from that. I think it's a sort of a back and forth iffy situation. The other one we'll talk about right now is Oregon. I think Oregon is the real deal. They are healthy, they're playing well, and they've done a nice job. They have perfect balance. Now listen, tonight they're having trouble with Miles Powell because Pritchard got in foul trouble early. But they were 5-0 coming into this game. The Fresno win, Boise win. Memphis was very impressive. Houston was very impressive at home as well. So they're getting tested tonight. I love Oregon. I know you love Peyton Pritchard, and I'm worried about Cincinnati. What do you got?
Okay, so here's my take on Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati crossed their fingers and hoped that they had a transition similar to their crosstown rival, Xavier, when they hired Steele and brought him in as their head coach. I know that for last year was a little bumpy early on, and then they actually played really well later on in the season and came on really strong. And we've seen how well Xavier has played this season thus far. They've been a top 25 team, no doubt. So I think that Cincinnati was crossing their fingers that maybe the transition would be similar, but I think they're running into the same problems that Xavier did last year, where they had a coaching transition, where they had a coaching icon left to go to a bigger place, and they're trying to find their identity again, just like you said. And to be honest, changing characteristics, changing profile a little bit, that's going to not jive really well with the roster.
It's an adjustment. Right. Exactly. That's my point. Yep.
Right. That was put together to defend really well and value possessions and play at a slower pace. So if he's going to tweak that and maybe adjust that, then he's got to get buy-in. And by the sounds of things right now, the buy-in isn't there. So let's go to your second team with Oregon. Look, I love Pritchard from day one. I was a little bit early on him last year. I'm still on him as one of the best lead guards in the nation. I think they have talent at other places. They have length. Look, Mathis has been unbelievable. And the chemistry that Mathis and Pritchard have shown in the backcourt, they're high school teammates. So they have some prior history. I think that just speaks volumes to how well they're going to play. I think they can do some things blindly there. So I think there's an unspoken trust between those two guys that are going to play a ton of minutes together. And they do have the freshmen that are going to come in and be impactful, that don't need to do too much, that can just, dive to the rim for a dunk, that can get an offensive rebound, grab a block on the defensive end, grab a defensive rebound that can start the fast break. Josh Richardson can get, Richardson can get out on the break on the wing. So they have pieces in place. I think Oregon might even be a step up on Washington with their two dynamic freshmen, because they have Pritchard in place and they have Mathis in place. These two veteran guards that have seen that, done that, and are not afraid to take and make a big shot in a big moment. So I'm with you on Oregon completely. And I think that Cincinnati is going to cross their fingers, and maybe year two looks a little similar to how Xavier's year two looks under Coach Steele.
I think we're sleeping on Rhodey. Rhodey right now is 5-2. They played West.
Fats? Yeah, let's give Fats some love. I love that.
Yeah, they had a nice win against Manhattan. Manhattan team 2 that was finally getting healthy, had all their players back. They won by 9, didn't cover. But Rhode Island's got all 5 of their starters back. They always play hard. You know my thoughts on Fats Russell. Cyril Angiovine inside. They beat LIU. Lost at Maryland, true road game, no shame there. They smacked Alabama by 14, put 93 in Alabama up there at home. They beat Nichols, who's very tough this year, by 5 at home. They beat North Texas, down screen, back screen, slow it down. Lost the game against LSU by 13, no shame there, and came back and beat Manhattan. I think we're sleeping on them. I like them. They're going to go Sunday at West Virginia. I think they are absolutely worth a look, and I think that they're better than people realize, because the A-10, no one tends to talk about it. And finally, for this group, Butler. Butler is good. You are the original Kamar Baldwin tout, and he put this team on his back. McDermott got hurt in the game there against Stanford, brought him back. Kamar Baldwin, money. This team is solid. They're scoring. They're undefeated. And oh, by the way, Gus, their next game headed down to play Ole Miss in Mississippi. So give me your thoughts there. Rhodey with the 5 starters back, A-10, no one's talking about him. And what about Butler? What about Kamar Baldwin?
Okay, so let's start with Rhodey. Number one, I think we can just talk A-10 on the whole. I think might be sleeping a little bit on the A-10 on the whole. VCU has been fantastic. We talked a little bit about Davidson. I think they have a tremendous backcourt. They haven't put it together yet. Maybe in A-10 play they do. But I think there's opportunity. I think the word that we're looking for, Richmond's played really well as well. We don't want to leave them out of the conversation at all. But I think that the word we're looking for Rhode Island is opportunity. They have an opportunity with a couple of wins that they garnered so far to build on that. And if they can, I mean, they're going to and by the way, with Fats and Tyree, like that backcourt matchup is awesome. That is not dissimilar from the backcourt matchup that Ole Miss just had when they went head to head. And that looks really appealing. So I'm going to say there's opportunity for Rhode Island to follow up with the wins. And if they can make some noise early in the A-10, and how about this? If they grab that win against a ranked VCU team, which I think they will be, then we're talking a couple of good elite A-10 teams. And if they can maybe knock off Davidson somewhere along the way. And then also, let's go to your second team. Let's go Butler. The guards in the Big East are legit. We got Powell. We got Marcus Howard. But let's not sleep on Kamar Baldwin. I think Kamar Baldwin could be in the discussion just below those two guys who are elite. Both those guys are elite shooters, and they're elite scorers. But as far as playmakers and shot makers and difference makers, I think we need to include Baldwin in the step right below them. And if you're going to include a Jordan coming off the bench, this team is not going to get cheated, and this team is going to play the right way, just like they do every time. Hashtag the Butler way. So Butler is not going to get, they were a little down last year. I suspect that they're going to sneak their way back up into the upper echelon of the Big East, and we're going to find them at a 3, 4, 5 spot. And they're going to be sitting pretty for a March invitation come later on this season.
Two teams that I cannot figure out. I don't have a handle on. The first one is Davidson. I was extremely high on Davidson. John Axel Goodmanson, Jag, coming back, Kellen Grady, the whole thing. He was injured last year, looks healthy this year. They open up losing against Auburn there at a neutral. No problem. They want to run. Auburn wants to run. Auburn runs better than they do. Fine. They lose by 10. Then they lose at Charlotte. Terrible loss. 13-point loss. Can't have that. Bounce back. They pound UNC Wilmington by 40. They pound Nevada. Thank you very much. By 20. Okay. Now I'm starting to get warmed up. Now I'm back on track. And then they lose to Wake by 12. So I can't figure them out at all. The other team, of course, Arkansas. Oh, Musselman. Now listen, Musselman is a let's go guy. Okay. So he's going to clap it up. He's going to clap. Let's go. We got to go. We got to get the ball. Really in-depth stuff there. Thank you, Mus. So he has them playing hard. And I will give credit, Gus. Their defense right now is stifling. They are number 1 in the country as per KenPom, holding teams 3-point percentage. They are allowing, are you ready for this? 14.1% from 3-point range. 14.1%. Second in effective field goal percentage. Here's my problem. Rice, North Texas, Montana, Texas Southern, South Dakota. That's no one. They did win at Georgia Tech after not scoring for the entire overtime, 4 minutes, 59.1 seconds. Then they bank in a 3 there to win by 1. I get
unprecedented, totally unprecedented finish.
I get the line Georgia Tech -1 because it comes out and I start laughing instead of being a normal person, as I said to Gus before we started this, and just waiting for the line to go up because the country's not going to dump money on Georgia Tech. It went up to 2.5. I got it at 1. We pushed. Arkansas is 6-0. Davidson lost to Wake Forest. Can you figure either of these teams out? I kind of think Davidson will get it together, and I think Arkansas is overrated. What do you think?
All right, so here's a couple things I got right away. Number 1, I think Davidson is falling prey to the being ranked early situation and then trying to deal with those expectations. They have the dynamic backcourt like you mentioned. Both of those guys are borderline NBA-ish players. Like Grady's like an NBA-ish type shooter. So I think they're still figuring out the expectation part of being ranked in a couple of preseason top 25s. So I think once we get to A-10, again, this is another team we talked about the A-10. Once we get to A-10 play, they'll probably be in the mix with Uri, who we just mentioned, probably be lagging right behind VCU. And because of that guard play, I think you have to include them. And because those guys can actually nail threes, the backed up 3-point line is not going to be effective to them. And I think the offense that Davidson runs is not going to be affected by the backed up 3-point line either. Okay. So let's get to Arkansas, right? You mentioned that Muss pays attention to the 3-point line big time. He also pays attention to it on the offensive end. He's going to let Isaiah Joe launch that thing from 23 feet, 25 feet, 27 feet. Like, that thing is going to happen. However, if there is no intermediary game, like there's no intermediary game where they're going to like have a pull-up game, drive to the rim, maybe have some dump-ins and get a paint touch and then kick it back out. That's the problem with Arkansas right now. I think the inconsistency on the offensive end is something that they need to figure out. Defensively, like you mentioned, they're going to be okay. They're going to be fine, especially if, and that 3-point number obviously is like deflated / inflated by the pushback 3-point line. So I'm not like totally buying into the 14% number there, but I do get why they're paying attention to that. So I think if they can kind of fix a couple of things on the offensive end with a couple of paint touches and a couple of dribble drives, then that makes sense, and that'll create some more space for their shooters, because we know that Muss is going to give those guys the green light from 3-point land. But if he's not going to give them the space and the opportunity and the proper spacing on the floor to do that, then that doesn't make sense at all either.
So I told this to Gus. I sent it to him. Colin Wilson, friend of mine. We cover college basketball over Action Network. Colin, it is refreshing, Gus, to talk to fans of a particular school or program that are objective. My brother-in-law, as you know, is a Patriots fan. They're always winning. There's not a game that the Patriots play that he's not predicting them to win. It's just ridiculous. There's no objectivity. Colin is the opposite end of that spectrum. So he's been there since the Corliss Williamson days. So we go back and forth. I told him Muss does an X and O. They should have lost to Texas a few years ago in the tournament. Mo Bamba fouled out. They come back. Then they should have lost the next game against Cincinnati. They had a great comeback. And last year they're loaded with players, super talented, couldn't beat Utah State, shared it, and then they lost to Florida in round 1. So I really felt like they underachieved. It's my opinion. Musselman, before that play, according to Colin, he saw it on the replay. All he wrote on the clipboard was the word basket with a circle around it. Okay. And that's why their play was dribble around and bank in a 3 from the corner. I just don't think he's an X and O guy. I don't trust him in the SEC against Kermit Davis of Mississippi, against Will Wade of LSU, against Cal over in Kentucky, against Mississippi State with Howland, even against Frank Martin on the road. I think he's going to get his comeuppance. I really do. I think he's an excellent recruiter. I think his kids play excessively hard, but I think to get to that next level, you have to be a bit of an X and O guy. And that's my concern. But no doubt he has won the fight here because he's covered a number of games, my friend.
Well, I have a feeling it's going to be an ongoing battle throughout the season. That's what I think.
You don't say. Next couple.
What else you got here?
Okay, a couple here. Is USC good, Gus? I didn't think they were good. Then I'm watching them and I'm saying, they actually have some talent. I'm not saying that they're going to be great, but to me right now, the Pac-12 actually looks a heck of a lot better than we thought it was. Last year at this time, people were downplaying the Pac-12. Now we're talking about them being decent. People think Washington's going to be okay, but USC I actually think is fairly okay. They started out very hot, 5-0. Now they lost to Temple 70-61. But they did win at Nevada by 10. They have some interesting games coming up here, but statistically, I'm impressed with their balance. They have, can you pronounce this for me? Okungwa. They have Kunwa inside. Rakasevic is good. Jonah Matthews. I think they're going to be a surprise. I think they are a tournament team. That's what I'm saying about them. And the second team, of course, is Florida. I can't figure out Florida for the life of me. They have been impressive. They've scored when they've needed to. They do play excellent defense, but I agree with what Fawcett said to us. I feel like they're playing a style, but they have much better athletes who feel like they're being handcuffed on offense. They beat North Florida. They lose to Florida State because they always lose to Florida State. They barely beat Townsend. They lose to Connecticut on the road. They beat St. Joe's. They beat Miami handily. And then they come and they beat Xavier on the neutral court there, which was a really nice win. Okay. I can't figure out Florida. I can't figure out USC. Are these teams good or not good?
I have no idea. This is a maddening question. I have a huge blind spot for USC. And look, they haven't figured it out for a couple of years now. We've been waiting on the talent that's been existing at USC to kind of make the difference, and that hasn't been the case. He does play an up and down system, and he's very player friendly. But really, I feel like it's very similar to your Muss situation, where he's not maybe the best X and O guy. And maybe he just kind of lets guys like create on the offensive end and doesn't have a ton of discipline there. Florida, on the other hand, we talked to Eric Fawcett, extensively about what was going on. I think that they'll get it figured out, and I think they just need to figure out like their characteristic. I think they just need to figure out their identity. Their identity is going to be lockdown. Their identity is going to be value possessions. Their identity is going to be kicking into the post of Blackshear. So I think once they kind of key in on that identity, and their identity is going to be like, Nebhart's going to take unbelievably good care of the ball and have a great assist to turnover ratio. Once that gets locked in, that style might actually have some sustainability this particular season in college basketball. So I think long term for Florida Gator fans, don't give up hope. That's what I'm going to say right now. So I'm going to say stay the course, Florida Gator fans, and USC fans. I'm not really sure because I do have a blind spot, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty on the front there as far as like what you're going to do offensively, and I don't know if they're necessarily committed on the defensive end.
Well, how about that, my friend? Oregon takes the lead, 71-69 over Seton Hall. By the way, not that I knew this, Gus, but they were favored by 1. I'm just saying. Okay. Our Seton Hall friend just said he just threw up. Isn't that lovely? Kevin Willard, you're the gift that keeps on giving. Moving on, a couple quick hitters. Gus, get your reaction. Yeah. Utah State with a huge come from behind win over LSU. Still waiting for Keita to come back. The big man inside, 6'11" sophomore who's defensive player of the year. They did not cover against North Texas, who controls pace of play much like an Ivy. But Utah State looks really good. Gonzaga's going to be fine. I think they're similar to Duke with really no outstanding, like all-American level players, but they play great as a team. They have a Hall of Fame coach. They played poorly against Texas Arlington, but they came back and blew everybody else out. I think Gonzaga's fine. Arizona State, Gus, I was impressed. They beat St. John's. I didn't think they would. And then UVA, contrasting styles. Normally that's not how you beat UVA, but they made it really, really frisky there against Virginia. So that was really impressive. Braxton Key's out, though, with a broken wrist for a couple weeks here.
Tough.
And then I'll turn over to you. Yale is good, bro. You had Harvard to the Final Four. I think Yale is good. They almost won at Penn State, which is not easy. They blew out Western Michigan and Bucknell down in Orlando. By the way, they host Vermont on December 1st. That's a must-watch. Huge game. So Utah State doing this without Keita. Sam Merrill's fantastic. Gonzaga pounding people. Maybe probably the best top team right now in terms of their performances, how they've looked consistently with only the one home game that wasn't great, but everything else has been fantastic. Arizona State, they're a little frenetic. Bobby Hurley, Pac-12, like I said, nice win over St. John's and played tough with UVA. And Yale is good. What do you got?
Okay, here's what I got right now. Utah State, we mentioned them earlier. Merrill is fantastic. I think that he is one of the best guards in the nation. And we've heard Matt Norlander, we heard Matt Doster, we've talked to when we talked to Ellie Lieberman. All of the people that we've had on have been on Utah State and been on Merrill as far as one of the best guards in the nation, and he is not disappointed, and this team has not disappointed. Just wait till they get healthy. This is very similar to the BYU Yoli Childs recipe. When they get their big man back and get him integrated fully, that's going to be dangerous. Listen, Gonzaga, all you need to know is go listen to the Jackson Frank podcast that we have out as well, and he's going to update you on everything that is Gonzaga and is good about Gonzaga. And I'll tell you right now, in a year where offense might be a little flighty and uncertain, the one thing that you can be certain about is that Gonzaga will score. They are operating at an unbelievable level on the offensive end. And Corey Kispert hasn't even got rolling until this particular game, when he hit a number of 3-pointers. So I think they'll be fine. Arizona State is interesting. And, Remy Martin might be the most saucy name in college basketball because you never know what you're going to get. It's kind of like, walking up to the bar and you don't know how the bartender is going to pour your drink. You don't know if he's going to go a little heavy-handed, or you don't know if he's going to just pour it just right. And that's exactly the game that Remy Martin plays. You don't know if he's going to play an absolutely beautiful game and light everybody up for 25, or you don't know if he's going to be turnover prone and maybe go like 3 for 14 from 3. So I think Arizona State is very Remy Martin dependent. And listen, nothing wrong with a little Ivy love. Like, Yale is good.
Yale is good. Yale is very, very good.
when we were texting with Dr. Tony earlier this week, he asked like, hey, do you feel like Yale is going to be okay this year? And I said like, they're going to be fine because Brunner is going to be the best player on the court for a number of different games, even against high majors. I mean, when we talked to him about like Yale, UCLA, I said like Brunner might be the best player on the court for both teams. So Yale is going to be fine, and they're really well coached. We know Jones can coach. That's not a thing. And that game against Vermont, you're right, is going to be absolutely bananas. So that's where I'm at with all of those guys.
Okay, couple last one, quick hitters on you. St. Louis, I have some love for St. Louis. I don't know, Gus, what it is. I tend to overvalue St. Louis. I think they're a pain in the ass. I love Hassan French. I think he's an NBA player, 30% from the free throw line, but if he can learn to make his free throws, he'll be fine. Big body, great rebounder. I think Travis Ford gets a lot out of them, and I think they're a pain in the ass. I really do. Boise State. Derek Alston is an NBA player. I watched them against BYU. Gussie, 6'9", with length. He's a guard. 21.4 points per game, 87% from the free throw line for a guy who's tall and long is not easy. 39.4% from three-point range. He is an NBA player. I'm not saying Boise State is great. I'm saying Alston is absolutely going to be drafted in the first round. No doubt about it. Love the way that kid plays. SMU is 5-0. We know what we think about Jankovic there, so I want to get your thoughts on them. And then Baylor beats Nova. Baylor is a problem. They lost at Washington, threw me off the scent. Nova's very solid, shares the ball real well. Of course, Jay Wright, excellent coach. But Baylor's good. So St. Louis, why do I love them? Boise State, Derek Alston, thoughts on him. SMU 5-0, Jankovic, is he under the radar? And Baylor, again, here we go again with Scott Drew.
So St. Louis, number one, they have a characteristic that is going to be sustainable for the whole entire season. They play defense. They're going to defend you. They're going to value every possession. They do have a couple shot makers who are good in those guys. So I get that part. But they are going to defend, and that's going to be something that, we talked about with Ohio State and UVA. Like, that's another A-10 team that's going to be in the mix. So the A-10 is underrated again. Hello, A-10 fans. We are talking a lot of Atlantic 10. Boise State. I think Derek Alston, you know what he does? He reminds me of Chandler Hutchinson. Like,
yes. Yep.
Right? Like the Bulls took him in the first round, like the 22nd or 23rd pick. He just reminds me of that type of diversity. And you know what? I think Alston is a little bit longer, and he might even be a little bit better shooter from deep. So I think that if we're going to compare him to somebody, why not compare him to one of the best players in Boise State history in Hutchinson? So I think that makes sense. And if he's going to be the best player on the court, they're going to have a chance in every single game, especially with that type of length that you were talking about. SMU, look. I was a year early on them. I thought they were going to be good last year. I think they might be decent against this year. Charlois is a shot maker, 6'9" that can make some threes. They have Isaiah Mike inside, who's kind of a Obi Toppin light type player who's a little bouncy, maybe not the 3-point range that Toppin owns. So they do have some interesting pieces. I think SMU is worth paying attention to because they have those two interesting bigs moving forward. And listen, I'll tell you right now, Butler from Baylor looks like he could play for any team in the country. You throw a Duke uniform on him, he would fit right in. You throw a UVA uniform on him, he'd fit right in. You throw a Villanova uniform on Butler from Baylor, he'd fit right in. So there is nothing wrong with what Baylor is doing, especially if they have a lead player that looks like he could fit into any blue blood program and be the best player on that team this particular year. So I'm down with them. So that's where I'm at with like St. Louis, Boise State, SMU, and Baylor.
Last ones for you here, and then we'll wrap it up. Dayton, Gus, the floor is yours. Dayton is awesome. You were on them last year. Grant has done a good job. Obi Toppin. Oh, dear Lord. An NBA player, a lottery pick through and through. Team is playing well. Crutcher banging a big three, almost taking it to Kansas tonight. So fantastic game out there. Virginia Tech, huge win over Michigan State. Then they were crushed by Dayton. Mike Young, I think, is an earlier Coach of the Year candidate as per John Gassaway. I saw that he agreed. And Gus, Colorado may be good. Okay. We always forget about Colorado out west. You and I don't. Right. Most people do. 5-0 after a nice comeback against Clemson. I watched that one. Second half betting, of course. So thoughts there on Dayton, Virginia Tech, and Colorado.
Okay, so Dayton, they should be ranked. They should be ranked all year. They have a dual point guard situation that is really advantageous in this particular year where they're going to have 2 ball handlers and 2 decision makers. And you saw Crutcher, how great of a shot maker he is in crunch time. I mean, that 3-point shot, well defended, should speak volumes about what he can do on the offensive end with the shot clock running down. But really, it comes down to Toppin. And let's break down Toppin. I'm going to break down Toppin for about 20 seconds here. Number one, the advances that he's made in his offensive game are tremendous because he came in as an athlete. And he came in as an athlete that had a growth spurt and had to get used to the long limbs and where his body started and ended. He came in with some guard skills. Those guard skills have not dissipated, and they've actually treated him really well. The display that he put on against Virginia Tech in both halves shows the dichotomy of the type of game that he can bring to the college game and then further on to the NBA level. In the first half, he nailed 3 threes. We talked about the expanded three-point line. He's comfortable shooting it out there. He'll get more comfortable as the year advances. Second half, he had like 3 spin and dunk moves that were outrageous, and he chinned up on the rim. So when we're talking inside-outside guys in this year's college game, the conversation has to include Obi Toppin every single time because he has this unbelievably unique skill set. So Dayton, because of the NBA talent that is Obi Toppin and the dual point guard situation that they have, and let's not forget McSell on the wing. Like he scored all their points in overtime against Kansas.
Very true. Yep.
They have like this veteran guy that is going to like not be afraid of the big moment and is fine to step up when his guys get double teamed. So Dayton is going to be there the whole entire time. And by the way, I'm totally with John Gassaway that Mike Young should be in the running for Coach of the Year. Just look at what he did last year in the SoCon. He took that Waffer team and went undefeated during SoCon play and then played Kansas down to the wire when his best player, one of the best shooters in the nation last year, had an off game and still had that game within a 1-possession game with 2 minutes to go. That guy can coach, and I don't think that this season is doing anything to disprove that at all. Colorado is great. They got one of the best point guards in the country. And let's not sleep on Bay, their wing player, who is a player. He can do a number of things. He can shoot it. He can drive in space. He can defend multiple positions. So they have 2 interesting, like, all Pac-12 type players. So yeah, Colorado's good.
That's all I got, partner. I think we can keep going on and on here, but I have to go watch Virginia Tech against my BYU Cougars, by the way, this year's WCC champions.
Ooh, look at that. Look what you did there. Look what you did there. That's fantastic. Listeners, we're just going to, make a couple requests. First request, please give the podcast a follow at SDS Podcast on Twitter. Efficiency of keystrokes, of course. Please don't forget to give Mike a follow at Randall Rant. He is fantastic, educational, and entertaining all at the same time. If you really like what you're listening to and you feel like we've kept you excellent company on multiple commutes during the college basketball season, please don't be afraid to leave a kind review, whether it be in print or with just punching in some stars on your podcast consumption vehicle of choice. We would really appreciate that. If we get a couple of nice reviews, we'll give you a shout out on the podcast, of course. We've done that in the past. We'll do that again. And last request, have a great Thanksgiving weekend. Spend some time with your family. Spend some time with your friends. Spend some time watching college hoops. And we hope that we keep you company when you're getting to one place from point A to point B, wherever those points might be. Mike, anything else for the listeners out there?
What's your favorite Thanksgiving side?
Man, you know what? Here's what I hope. I hope that there's some mashed potatoes. I hope there's some skin in the mashed potatoes. I also hope that there was some sour cream used in the mashed potatoes prior to me putting it on there. I also hope there's some half and half in the mashed potatoes. I'm just really simple. I'll take some turkey. I'll take some mashed potatoes. And by the way, if there's some string beans involved, I'm totally down with that. I don't care if they're baked. I don't care if they're boiled. I really am a big string bean guy. So if we got some beans in there, I'm down. Yourself?
Love stuffing, love carrots, and as you know, turkey's great, of course. Love cranberry sauce, right?
There's nothing wrong with any of those. All right, listeners, thank you so much. We'll catch up with you before you know it. Please safe travels out there and enjoy the holiday hoops that we have rolling for you. Cheers, cilantro, gazzalazia, arigato.
I'm addicted to the appetite. It's like a seed in the van.